Hello, hello, and welcome back to the show. This week is another episode of a wonderful, powerful, intelligent woman who is paving her own way. And I'm super excited to have this conversation with her. And it's going to be inspirational and informative and all of the things. So I'm really excited to introduce Sorina Sandor. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Sorina is a functional movement and holistic health coach based in New York City. And Sorina and I actually met when she lived here in Naples, Florida, like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've been able to witness a lot of her journey, obviously from a distance, from good old social media. And I just think her journey is amazing and inspirational, and also her content, which, by the way, you have to go follow her, and I'll link all of that stuff in the show notes. But her content on holistic health is something that you need to go and watch and have that in your life. Um, so I'm really excited to dive into this conversation.
Me too. Where do we start?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I created some questions for our talk, you guys, and I just like there were so many things that I wanted to ask her and wanted to talk to her about, because I love to bring on women who, and I'm very intentional, you guys, about who I come on here and who, I want to like have information shared to you by, because um, I really choose people who are not only paving their own way and like designing their own life, but are also, teaching other people how to take care of themselves and love themselves and transform their life, their body, their relationships, their health, all of these different things in a way that actually works, in a way that is like really getting to the root cause and really just creating real transformation, because there's so much out there that is not that. And so like I love to intentionally pick, people and invite people onto the show who have just amazing things to share and talk about. And that is definitely you, Sorina.
Well, let's hope so. Hope I bring some value for you guys.
For sure. So, okay, Sorina, you do some work in a studio in New York City, and that's more like movement fitness stuff, right?
Yeah, I have my own boutique studio on the Upper East Side alongside my partner and my lover. We actually have two boutique studios in the same building. So I have my half where I'm at right now, and then he has his half on the other side of the hallway. And this is where we see people in person, and we do more of the physical work, more of the corrective exercise, anything fitness related happens in here. And then there's a whole new component online. That's the holistic health part of
Yeah,
things.
where you're doing like courses and programs and um, like having the ability to connect with people all over the world, which is so cool.
Yeah. I've had
And
people from all over America, really from the West Coast to the East Coast. I had a couple of clients from Romania, from Dubai, and it's just like so much fun to work with them like that.
yeah, it's so cool to have that ability. Like it just opens up so much. Something you just said, I think like there was a moment there when you just said, yeah, I have my own boutique studio in Upper East Side. Like, have you ever, I don't know, for me, like sometimes it takes me a moment to like stop and like realize like, whoa, like this is really a part of my life. Like just saying that out loud is that like, holy shit? Like, yeah, I do. I have a boutique studio in the Upper East Side of New York City, and I'm living my dream. What is that like?
Yeah, that's a good point, because we definitely, and I say we because I see this very often in women in particular, we have the tendency to just kind of like move on to the next thing and like, okay, one thing is achieved, let me move on to the next. And we don't really just stop and celebrate. And that's a really good point, because I do catch myself sometimes saying things like that. And I'm like, oh, wow, like that's me. I do that.
That's my life.
Like I do that. Like I've done that for myself. So yeah, I for sure celebrate that, because it's not easy. It hasn't been easy.
Yeah. And so you guys, when I met Sorina, you were a personal trainer at like different studios here in Naples. And she was also going through the hardest time of her life. And I think that this is something that like you guys really need to hear, because I think that we can often put off, our dreams and our goals because we think like, oh, it's not the right time and all of this, disaster is occurring in my personal life. But I think that, for people who are truly paving their own way and designing their own life and creating their own version of success, it's like we find a way to still move forward no matter what is happening, no matter if like, you freaking end up homeless or like, you know what I mean? Like there's so many stories around that. And, at that time, well, I'll let you speak for, kind of what was happening in your life at that time before you left Naples and like designed this whole other life for yourself.
Yeah, it's so interesting because sometimes I feel so disconnected from that version of myself, because I've come such a long way to where some of the things that I was going through and I was feeling back then almost seemed like it wasn't me. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but it's just like wait, that was me also. Just like now I'm celebrating the life that I built for myself. Sometimes I'm like having a hard time to believe that was my life back then. And I know you were sharing earlier that, you weren't really sure what I was going through at the time, because I don't know how much I was showing and I don't know how much I was aware of, honestly, because a lot of the things that I was going through and what that meant for me emotionally, I came to realize years later as I was doing the work, as I was like going deeper into my nervous system, really, because that's where everything is stuck. And our mind can tell us one thing and can forget certain things, but our body keeps the score. And so what was happening was I was going through a separation and later on a divorce from my ex-husband. And I was in a space where, I mean, it took me, I don't know, you're not familiar with this, but it actually took me a year after I moved to New York to finalize a divorce. Like it wasn't an easy process.
Oh.
And so at the time, I was going through this separation that was not mutual. There was a lot of pressure for me to go back and try again. But I just knew, because there's always a moment. There's always a moment when, whether you're a spiritual person or not, and I was not identifying as one back then, but there was a moment when it got to be about me. It just got to be about me and no longer about anybody else, and trying to sacrifice my own happiness for the sake of an idea or somebody else's happiness through my perspective, right? And once you tap into that knowing, and it can be challenging, because if you're not in tune with your body, and so many of us are not, it's hard to pinpoint it and see it and recognize it for what it is. And like trusting yourself, I was struggling with that, but it was a feeling. I just went for it. And I did all the things that, I knew I was missing New York, because I had moved to Naples, Florida from New York for the marriage. I knew I was missing New York. I knew that this is what I needed to kind of like start a healing process. And so I just up and left and started from scratch here again.
Yeah, because
I had
let's
started
also
before.
talk about the fact that you're from Romania, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when did you move to the States?
In 2013. So it's been almost 10 years now, which is crazy. I moved to Martha's Vineyard initially, funny enough. Funny
Oh,
story. But New York City, 2014. So a year later, New York City. And I lived here up until I moved to Naples, which was 2016, maybe. And then moved back 2018, and started over again.
wow. That is a lot on the nervous system for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm realizing just how much now, honestly.
Yeah. I think it's always, in hindsight, it's like, holy shit. It's like looking back and realizing I was literally living in survival mode that entire time, and I don't even know how I got through that. I know that's
Yeah.
definitely been an experience for many years of my life, and just waking up to that, in the last 4 or 5 years. And
Mm.
even every day, I still wake up to it even more like, whoa, holy shit. Like last week, I was kind of tapped into survival mode again. Like, how did that happen? Let's like reset myself.
Oh yeah, so many moments like that still.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you think? And we're going to get more into like health and your business and like tips and stuff for people, but I just think there's so much wisdom here. What do you think was guiding you to like, because this is not a normal journey, like a lot of people don't go on this journey, and they stay in their comfort zone, and they don't take risks, and literally everything you've done has been with the risk involved, like moving here from Romania, getting married, moving to Naples, and leaving New York where you really wanted to be, and then leaving your marriage and moving back to New York, and like starting your business. And it's like risk after risk after risk that so many people avoid. But like, what do you think was really driving that?
Well, I mean, I've always kind of been a rebel in my own, in a sense. Um, you know, I was always very clear on what I don't want. And I do believe that once you have that clarity, then it's just like, well, the only step is to move out of this, whatever that means. So starting with Romania, like I just knew my whole life I was not going to stay in Romania. Like that was just given. And so the question is, okay, so where and when? It's not if, same with like every step after. It was like, okay, well, I'm not going to stay in this marriage, period. So then what? Well, here we go. Okay, we got to jump somewhere.
Yeah.
Same with New York, like same with Florida. I'm not going to stay in Florida. Okay, well, and then it's just as soon as it's not a matter of if, then you just take the step and you trust yourself, and it's not always easy, but I realized that pretty early on, and I started to do the work on myself and like build that trust within myself so that I can make these decisions more smoothly. Because honestly, thank you for all the words that you use to describe me. And I know you kind of like made me sound better than I am, but a lot of these decisions, were long overdue. Like, should that marriage have been 5 years? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like I can go back and see how, oh wow, like that could have happened earlier. I could have made that move earlier. I could have made that happen earlier. And so by getting to know myself and working on myself, now I am able to pinpoint things that don't align with me and make those changes faster. I also believe there are no mistakes, so I'm not gonna say that, but you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it wasn't always easy, and it's still not.
Yeah, it is. The first thing you said there, I think is really important, is that because, a lot of people, especially when they are showing up, in my world, and they're like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, or I don't know why things aren't working or whatever. And there's this like need for clarity before taking action. And I know I've been there too, where I'm like, oh, I just need more clarity before I do this. And that's not how it works. But I think to your point, what you just said is like, I knew what I didn't want. So it's not that you necessarily had full clarity on what you did want. It was that you had clarity on what you did not want. And that only takes one piece, right? It's like this marriage, I do not want. Okay. And then what's the next step?
Yeah.
And I just think that's so powerful for people because they get caught, our human mind gets caught in this like confusion state and seeking clarity. But instead of like, what do I want? What do I not want?
And I just want to acknowledge that because I still struggle with my own version of perfectionism. And also, there's a fear of judgment that I believe is present for many when they take messy action. I like to call it messy action because that's what I'm in the practice of these days to overcome my perfectionism and to be able to take faster action. But without feeling like I'm failing somebody or I'm being stopped by somebody's opinion or judgment on my actions, which is, if you're somebody who has a strong need for approval, which is what I definitely used to have that, and I still have some of that. It's very easy to be stopped by what you believe others could perceive you as if you're not perfect in your actions and you don't have everything well thought through. I definitely had that because I know there are members of my family who have certain opinions about the way I do things, and by me doing this, like, how are they gonna see me, and are they still gonna love me? Because at the end of the day, we all just want to be loved and accepted. And am I triggering the opposite by me taking this action? So it's very easy to be stopped by that, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. But I think what you just said is almost like another route to take. What do I not want? And then also like facing that potential rejection and not being accepted and loved and having that sense of belonging and support that we all need, especially on this journey of like really creating your own life.
Yeah.
So when you were going through the divorce and moving and you were following that, like whatever that, that voice inside of you, your intuition, was there anything that was like telling you that you were like crazy, that you were being unrealistic, that you should, just have a normal life? And because I know for me, like I've definitely experienced that where I'm like, gosh, why can't I just be normal? Like, why can't I just want the normal things? That would make life so much easier. But like, I'm just not that person.
Yeah, same. I mean, really, same. But again, I go back to, can I just be normal? But then when I was doing normal things, I remember how I felt. And that doesn't resonate. When I had a desk job, well, it's like, no, I don't want to get a paycheck. No, I don't want to spend my 9 to 5 in an office. I've done that. I can tap back into that feeling and I get over that story real fast. It's like, I wish I was normal because damn it, like, why am I doing this to myself? And it's like, well, I tried that. I have really, and I'm good.
Yeah. I definitely experience that often. Where it's like a quick reminder of like, well, I could have, the safe job or the false sense of security in this, and then it's like, my soul is like, no, like, just no, just stop, Crystal. It's a no. Like, okay,
We're not going there again. We've learned that lesson. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, okay, you got to New York and did you go straight into personal training there? And like, at what point did you take your business online and decide like, okay, I want to expand this?
Yeah, I came back to New York as a personal trainer. I went all in on personal training. I was hired at a gym that I had worked at before, full-time personal training. And I think it was very soon after then, I became number one in the company, and I was like, so now what? Like, I've always had this, like, okay, I've reached this new level, and what's next? Like, stagnation is what I'm mostly afraid of in this life. So then whenever I feel like I'm stagnating in any way, it's like, so what is exactly that's about to happen? Because we need a next step. What is that? And so I think I started experiencing my own health issues, because although I was I came back to New York. I started dating my now boyfriend, Esco, and I was feeling free, I was feeling happy, all the things. And although I was the happiest that I had been in a while, I was experiencing all sorts of like interesting psychosomatic and like physical, I don't know what to call them. I just saw them as issues, as health related issues that I couldn't quite figure out. And at the time I was studying functional movement with Paul Chek, if you're familiar with it. And he is also really into holistic health. And so while I was studying his approach to functional movement and really trying to find out more about, the intelligence of the body, I couldn't help but also check out his other stuff around, how, like, we know nutrition influences movement and whatnot, but then even deeper, like hormonal stuff, gut health, detoxification process, viscera, how the viscera and the inflammation in the viscera can affect the muscular system, and so on and so forth. And so I started looking into that, and I started paying attention a different way to what I was eating and how I was sleeping. And like, I just started things that now seem so basic to me. At the time, like, it's like, I want to laugh because it's like, what, really? But I didn't know, because I'm just FYI, like in personal training school, which it's not a school, there are different courses and programs they go through. They don't teach you that.
Yeah.
So anybody hiring a personal trainer, just so you know, they are not taught anything about circadian health, daily habits that can influence your production of cortisol and melatonin, which directly impact your sleep, which directly impact your energy levels, which directly impact your performance. They don't know anything about that unless they continue their education in these other ways. And so as a personal trainer, as number one in the company, I was not aware of these things. So I started studying under Paul Chek. And the Chek system is one of the most holistic approaches to health there is. And what happened next? Yeah, I just started really with my own health. I was still seeing people in person at the gym, doing personal training. And then I believe the pandemic happened. And the pandemic was really good to me. The pandemic was like, it just kind of like, going back to what made you go to the next step. The freaking pandemic. In the pandemic, as soon as the pandemic happened, I opened up my boutique studio. I finally found the courage to leave the gym and actually go on my own. When the pandemic happened, that's when I took half my business online, because what a great opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just continued my own personal journey of healing, and I dove really deep into that. And then once I started seeing the results in my own journey, that's when I started really studying. I studied gut and hormonal health through the Institute of Integrated Nutrition. I got really deep into that. I healed my own hormonal issues and gut issues. And so after a few years of doing that, I started sharing what I had learned with clients. So it's always been me first, study second, share third. And, that's kind of like a long-winded answer for how I got here.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I really love about your work and you is that you, like you said, personal trainers, because I got my NASM certification as a personal trainer, and like, yeah, there is like, it's not on health. It's like,
No,
that's the thing. Health and fitness are not the same thing. And I think that people don't realize that. But yeah, like you are seeking out information and training and like really looking at the entire body, which I think is a rare thing to find in somebody who is also a personal trainer. And you can help people with their gut, you can help people with their hormones, you can help people with their nervous system, you can help people lose weight, you can help people with pain. Like there's all of these things that you do. And I just really appreciate that. I know that I saw something you did where you went to a lab and you were studying, you were working with bodies. Um, how do I say
yeah,
this word? Cadavers.
yeah, with
Yeah.
dissection.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, that is amazing because, I had to do that for nurse practitioner school, but like to have somebody who is like a personal trainer and a holistic health coach go to that, like to that length to really understand the human body, I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's, we were talking earlier about the rabbit hole. It's like once you feel like you're onto something, I think we're built that way, honestly. Like I think there's something where it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm onto something. Like I just have to keep going. Like I can't stop here. I can't just offer what I have, and that becomes really the struggle in running your own business. You're always learning so much to the point where by the time you're able to articulate what it is that you do, that changes. And
Yeah.
so people are always like, Sorina, what is it that you do? I'm like, it's complicated, a
I
lot.
just, yeah, like I just help people. That's what I do. Like, I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. Just tell me what you need and I'll let you know how I can help you.
Which is like, that's one of the main challenges in business and marketing. We kind of chatted a little bit about this before of like figuring out like what do I call myself and how do I explain what I do to people when what I do is like not, average or normal. It's like this all-encompassing thing. And how do I find the words to express this? And something else you just said was like, at the time you were learning basics, what seems basic to you now, like, nutrition and stuff like that. And a lot of times what I have found with people, especially when they're like newer coaches and newer at marketing and stuff, is like, they're like, well, I don't really know like what I'm teaching. And it's like, when you embody so much of what you learn, like you don't even realize what you have to, like how much you have to offer and teach. It's like, oh, nutrition, duh. Like, doesn't everybody know that? No. Like, doesn't everybody know that, you should hydrate yourself? Or doesn't everybody know that you should get morning sunlight? No, like these basic foundational things. So I don't know if you can relate to that, but
So much. And what stands out to me in running my own business and creating my own programs is just how much resistance and imposter syndrome I have prior to creating a program. And then, and almost feeling so honored and sometimes shocked. This is in the beginning where when people say yes to me, because it's almost like, oh my gosh, you really? Like there was a moment when it was like, oh, really? And then just for me to discover throughout the programs that, oh, wow, like you said, like it becomes, I embody it so much that I'm not even aware that these people need it so much. And then there's nothing else I need to do on top of that. It's almost like everything just kind of like pours out of me. And I see the impact that it has on women, because I work with women really 99%. Like, oh, wow, like I have this inside of me. And it's so like, it still blows my mind that it's just what's common sense for me is actually the medicine that so many people need. And I get
Yes.
to do that for them. And then that gives me confidence, and that, you know, every single time somebody's life is transformed by me showing up the way that I am and sharing what I already do for myself and what I've been studying for years that became second nature. Like, oh, wow, like I can't not share this. I can't not continue to develop this side of me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's this part of us that always wants to make it more complicated. And I know for me, there's always this like, well, this isn't good enough. Like, you need to add more to this, or you need to learn more about this. And it's like, no, like I have to have that conversation with myself often. Like, no, this is good enough. Like, I don't need to make this fancier or like add in a shit ton more content, or like the things that I already do and know, like that's enough. And I think, that's always the battle with being an entrepreneur. It's like, it's always you versus you and
Oh, yeah.
all of these self-doubts and shitty thoughts that are like, this isn't good enough. You need to make this more complicated.
So interesting, because they only pop up though when I'm isolating myself from people. Like when I'm by myself at home, trying, like right now, it's a really good example. I'm working on this online course, my first ever online course that I'm gonna put out, and I'm having such a hard time with it because I am working in isolation, and all these thoughts creep in, and there's no feedback. It's just me and my thoughts trying to write them down on a freaking laptop while sitting down, which is everything that I hate. I chose this profession for a reason. I don't like sitting down and doing that type of work. And they creep in when it's just me and I'm isolating myself. But whenever I am around women, like everything that I have to offer just comes out in such a natural way. And there are no thoughts of not enoughness in those moments. I only feel them when I'm alone and there's no feedback, which tells me a lot of my patterns and what I get to work on. It's like, oh, what's up with this worthiness story? And why is it still present when it's just you? So that's something that I work on my own. But it's just interesting how when I'm in my element, when I'm surrounded by women, when I'm interacting with people who align with me, there's no room for all these like silly,
Yeah.
nasty thoughts.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? It's like when you're in your element, and like there's synergy, and there's just like it's like getting out of your own way and allowing your purpose to just like pour through you and out of you.
Yeah.
But then I know, yeah, like sitting down, and whenever I try to like get myself to like, okay, I'm ready to like record this module or create this course or write this landing page, it's like, like I hate sitting down too and working on the laptop. So definitely like there's always resistance there.
So hard.
um there's something else that you just said I wanted to touch on. Oh, just like the worthiness story, and I think like just highlighting that is a thing for everyone. I think that especially in entrepreneurship, like you do have to come face to face with yourself. Like you can't really escape any of these stories that you have. You can't escape this inherent like question of your own worthiness that we all carry within us, and it's just like shoved in your face over and over throughout this journey. And I think like it's important to normalize that too. Like we all experience that, like, am I worthy of this, or am I good enough for this? And it's just like an ongoing kind of like thing that pops back up, like, to remind you.
I actually don't believe it's ever gonna fully disappear. I think it just kind of like
Yeah.
transmutes and transforms in other, like in other types of feelings, and maybe it diminishes, and maybe it changes and morphs in different ways. But I don't know if it ever, because some things are so locked in and so programmed into our nervous systems that, are we ever going to break free from them? I'm not sure, but just bringing awareness over them and recognizing them faster, I think, is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So that it doesn't send you on this long ass journey of like, okay, like what the hell what path did I go down because I allowed this story of my worthiness or lack of worthiness convince me that I shouldn't do this and I can't be that.
Mhm.
Definitely gets exhausting, but
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that it's probably never going to go away. It really is just awareness, practice over and over and over.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like your journey with showing up on social media, because you have a huge following? And so I'm curious, like, what has that journey been like? Because just showing up on social media is a big hurdle and challenge for so many of us. Especially when, it's a personal brand. Like I tell a lot of people, like, there's a difference between a brand and a business and a personal brand.
Mm.
And like really putting yourself out there and doing your best to do that authentically and in a way that like is true to you, but in a way that also like people can understand. And like, so can you talk about what that's been like? Because you have what, like 90,000 followers on your Instagram page?
Yeah. Well, there's a funny story behind that too. It's not all, I wouldn't take credit for all of them in some way, but I'll get to that too. I think I was definitely struggling with that, because who am I to fill in the blanks, right? Like, well, who's going to listen to me? Because what do I know? Because you never feel like you know enough. And then, I was never somebody who was, like I said, I was doing so many things just for myself, for my own journey, that I didn't feel like I had the authority to share them with the world, because I never felt like I knew enough, and who am I to share with the rest of the world? And actually, I was in what had me work through that was having my coaches help me reframe some of these thoughts. I don't think I would have been able to do it by myself, honestly, because the stories in our minds can be very powerful and overtaking a lot of the dreams and hopes that we have. And I actually remember a conversation with one of my mentors, Preston Smiles, who I still work with in group containers, because I'm not yet at a point to afford him one-on-one. Look him up, people. He's amazing. But I still remember conversations with him around how I show up on social media about 2 years ago. And me saying things like, well, I don't want to just show up there just to show up or just to talk. And then he helped me reframe that, like, well, is it just to talk? Or is it for you to actually share what's being poured through you? Like, help people? Like, are you there just to talk or to help somebody? Like, what's your intention? I was like, well, my intention is, of course, to help people. It's like, well, see how you're not just showing up to show up. You're literally going there to help somebody. And once I started thinking of it as, I'm literally robbing somebody from experiencing a breakthrough, from bettering their health, if I protect my, what do I call it? My desire, my urge to play small, to hide. So I started, and the change hasn't happened right away. The change happened over the course of a few months, maybe even a year. from the moment when I realized that, oh, wow, like I'm literally watching these people struggle with their weight, with their injuries, with all the things. And I'm just over here not saying anything. And I had to
Yeah.
watch myself in that for quite a while to finally realize that, oh, what, maybe if I say something, these people no longer have to suffer. Like, what a concept, you know? And now
Yeah.
like it's funny and it's so basic again, but like it took, like I wasn't thinking that way. And so that was really the first step. Like I was just witnessing myself and not sharing things that could help other people who were looking for help. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
somebody out there who is literally has the money out, like, please, somebody help me with this. Like you going to a dentist, my tooth is hurting. I need a
Mm-hmm.
dentist. And the dentist is like, I don't know, me? Really? Like, am I worthy? Like, can you please fix my
Right.
tooth? Because I'm in pain. Like, please. So it's like, no, somebody, like, you're not, I was coming from this idea of like, oh, like, I don't want to bother anybody as if people don't have, like, I was protecting people from, God forbid, being bothered by my knowledge. You
Mm.
know, like, where is that coming from? And then I had to work through that, like, oh, wow, like, where did I get that from in my own upbringing, right? Because I got it from somewhere. It's not mine. We're born
Mm-hmm.
into beliefs and interpretations that are not ours. They're our families, our teachers, our environments. And so I did the work of figuring out where all of these things are coming from, or most of them. And you know, worked with coaches to help me like repattern some of these things and just
Mm-hmm.
really just shift it to service. Like I'm here for whoever needs me because people need this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like, that's just a, that's a mindset that you created for yourself. Obviously with the help of, coaches, like that's why we hire coaches. That's why we are coaches, because, we understand that we can reach new levels with coaches. But um yeah, it's like and this is the piece of like the mindset work that I think that, can be missing for some people, where like you have to literally retrain your brain to support the next version of yourself, to support, becoming the person that shows up on social media, even when you have these voices that are like, you're not good enough, who am I, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And it is like, I think that, that shift of like, this isn't about me. And that's what I have had to tell myself when I'm like, oh, I don't have anything important to share. Oh, I don't feel like showing up. And it's like, this is not about me. Like, get out of my own way. This is not about how I feel or what my ego is telling me. This is about the fact that, yeah, somebody out there is like seeking whatever, your form of medicine is. And for you to not offer that is selfish, because, like, you're trying to protect your ego. It's selfish.
Right, right. And the other thing is, I used to play this game of, well, there's this other person who does what I do, but better because they have more experience. That was a huge story of mine.
Yeah.
And same through coaching, like it was brought to my attention that it was mirrored back to me, the fact that I chose certain coaches because I just resonated more with them, not because they're more experienced or more or better in any way than others. And so why can that not be true for me? Like, why is it that I only look at, oh, that person is more experienced, so everybody has to go to that person. That person has a certain capacity and a
Hmm.
certain personality and approach that doesn't resonate with everybody.
Hmm.
Maybe my approach, for whatever reason, maybe because I'm Romanian, maybe because I'm an immigrant, maybe because of the way I talk, the way I like, something about my story resonates more with a potential client, and they choose me based on that. Like, why, if it's true for me and I choose my mentors and my coaches based on that, like, why do I make it so that it can't be it doesn't work the same for me, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And then when you kind of like have to admit to yourself, like, oh wow, like that makes no sense anymore.
Yeah.
kind of like have to let go of that story.
Yeah. It's like, really rooted in the imposter syndrome. And um, yeah, that idea of like somebody else can do it better than me. But yeah, for me, I think it's like a soul resonance. Like I resonate with somebody's soul. I resonate with somebody's energy.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there's something about that person. And it's not because they have like the best results in the world or they are whatever. It's like there's something about them that their soul has medicine for my soul. And I'm like being pulled to that.
Yeah, I totally came to realize it's the same. It's the same for me. And, like in the past, like there were definitely like certain words that like would trigger the shit out of me. Like this whole like, oh, their soul was like, I used to be very like, don't talk to me about the soul. Like, what is that? Because I'm so like, I am such a logical person, and like my brain is so like is looking for clear answers and scientific proof of everything. And so it took me a while to really embrace my spiritual side, and now it's the dominating one, I would say. Like I tap more into that than anything else. But I had to be in the practice of opening up to it. So now it totally resonates, and I totally understand now why I feel more attracted to some people than others. It is on a soul level. But there are moments in life when you maybe don't know what it is. You just kind of like feel a pull that you can't.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know why I just resonate with this person, and that's fine. Like you can just
Yeah.
leave it at that, and hey, I'm gonna choose them because I feel connected, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
valid.
It's so funny. Like, I think so many of us are conditioned and programmed to not be, in touch with our spirituality and to be the logical person and to seek all of the physical evidence of XYZ. And so it's like, it's almost like an act of rebellion to even be like, no, like I'm going to follow my intuition. Like sometimes when I say that and people in my life who are like not, they don't have that belief system and they're just like, yeah, but that doesn't make any logical, like that's not the facts. Like like if you look up blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't feel right for me. So it's like that the whole spirituality journey is like an entire conversation, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I think there are layers. There are layers that need to be peeled off to get to that. I kind of like almost like accidentally fallen into it.
Mhm.
That makes sense. Like I never chose it. It
Yeah.
wasn't like, okay, now I'm curious about this. Let me look into it. It was almost like I just kept stumbling upon it over and over again from many angles until I just took a little bit, and then I allowed a little bit more, and then things started clicking in a different way. So it's just like kind of like I am patient with that when it comes to people that I work with, because I know it's a process.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you about, and maybe we already kind of covered some of this, but what is your, like, if obviously women are listening to this and they're like struggling with their health, their body, um, and a multitude of things. Like, what do you feel like is your own like unique approach? Like if they're listening and they're like, maybe I should look at like working with her, hiring her, finding more about what she does. What do you think makes your approach, the unique approach that it is and makes it different, and why, it's not the cookie cutter thing that other people may have tried and not had the results that they want?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good question in the complexity of
Yeah.
what I do. It's so women who come to me usually come for weight loss, injuries, the desire to get stronger. So either for fitness related struggles or goals, or for weight loss. And this usually happens in my group programs, like weight loss, just regaining a sense of aliveness, getting rid of fatigue, stuff like that. And so these are the two. I will break them down into two categories just because it seems to be one or the other, like physical fitness or nutritional, gut, hormonal type challenges. And so I think I'm doing a really good job at combining everything and making the big picture very comprehensive for people, regardless of their struggles. So, women in general tend to look at their health and maybe say, oh, nothing's working, or stuff like that. But really, when you dig a little, you realize that they only focused on some dieting and some over exercising. That seems to be the case, where it's like, okay, let me try to lose weight by way of cutting down food or following a certain diet, or by killing myself in the gym. That is just really, it's like 90% of the women, So once you realize that's really what you're working with, I'm doing a really good job at presenting the bigger picture and really focusing on, okay, let's stop this nonsense. Health is way more than that, and let's focus on cellular health. Like, just think of it as bringing health into your cells that are in your entire body, right? You want to have the ability to create energy for your cells to communicate well with each other, because your muscle cells are in charge of how your muscles function. Your heart cells are in charge of, pumping blood. Your gut cells are in line of digestion, and so on and so forth. And so, am I bringing nutrients into my cells so that all my organs and my entire being can function at peak capacity? Well, how do I do that? Well, and there's where the retraining begins, right? It's like, okay, well, it's not about calories and macros, which is what I also used to believe. They play a role later on, right? Right now, let's focus on quality of the food. Like, what does that mean? Well, where is your food coming from? And why does that matter? Like, I present these things in a very simple way to where it's almost like, oh, duh, like, why didn't I think of this? And where is my food coming from? And why does that matter? How does that impact my gut and hormonal health? And why does that matter? And very quickly in my programs, you get to see, like, within a couple of weeks, you get to see how, oh, what I eat and the quality of what I eat impacts my gut health, and how I sleep impacts my hormonal health. And then when I sleep this way, my hormones get out of whack, and then my sugar cravings and my crashes start, and then my eating goes out the window. And then, so I just kind of like take them through a journey that's very self-explanatory. Like, we do what I call basic things. It's a simple approach that just shows them. It just shows them how everything is interrelated. And then they have these aha moments when it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is what I've been noticing around, my menstrual cycle, around my PMS, around my like endometriosis, like all sorts of like conditions that women struggle with. And it's like, oh, my pain is gone. Oh, I don't bleed like I used to. Oh, my mood is better. Oh, the weight is just coming off. Oh, I didn't realize that emotional thing that I was going through, because we tap into that as well, was really affecting how I was eating, how I was sleeping. And so I just created this approach where I just take them through the journey. Like, you came to me for weight loss, we're going to get there, and this is how. And it's a very simple way for them to just see for yourself, because too much theory is also, like, people don't really like that, I came to realize, which.
Yeah. They just kind of want to know like the steps, and they want to understand what actions do I need to take to get this result. Like,
Right. So, which I can get so frustrated with. I'm doing much better now, but because I'm such a, like, I can, when I tap into my inner geek, I get like, how do you not know this? You must know. You must know the everything that's behind it. It's just like, no, you don't. So that's what I do. I take them through a journey for them to just experience the changes. And then we get to, that's why I love my online programs, because there's a lot of coaching as well. So that's really what I've been tapping to for the past year, really. I really went in on coaching because that's where a lot of the magic happens. And they get to verbalize and express themselves and be seen in that, because there's also power in being seen by a group of women who are going through the same challenges. And you learn a lot from each other. And so I have a newfound passion for group programs because of that.
yeah, totally agree. They're so transformative, and like just the bonding that happens and the learning from each other. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then on the other and I guess with the physical training, same thing. Like, I look at movement from such a functional perspective, to where like I don't just see muscles and bones and like, okay, how do we lose weight or build muscle or like fix this injury at the level that it's happening at. I look at, again, the whole body. The body gets to be in balance. When the body is in balance from all around, that's when healing happens. And then how do we rebalance the body? And the body doesn't just mean muscle and bones, although that's what people think we're working with. I'm also considering what's in link with the body part that we're actually working, like viscerally, what's in link with that. And that's where I do a lot of the ELDOA stuff comes into play, because people look at ELDOA, and it's something that I've been talking about on my Instagram. It's hard to understand, because it's something that not many people hear about, and when they do understand, it's like, oh, like, what's the big deal about it? Well, it's the intention behind it. Like, you actually don't just look at the herniated disc that you're working with. It's like, okay, yes, we're addressing that, and we're addressing all the tissues around it, and we're addressing like how the viscera is being impacted by that issue. And then when you heal that entire body part, is when you actually get to experience deep healing. It's not segmental. It's not isolated.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just for those of you who are listening, ELDOA, is that how you say it? It's a abbreviation, right? For something,
Yeah.
or acronym for something, or
it's a French acronym. The acronym in English would be LOADS, longitudinal osteoarticular decoaptation stretching.
okay. And so this is something you're certified in, right?
Yes, I'm a level 4 practitioner. That just means that so should I go into what ELDOA is?
Yeah, like what, because I've never heard of it before you, and I don't know, like, what about that would make it be something that I'm like, oh, I need that, or I think I need that, or I think that would benefit me. Like, how would I know that's something that I should do?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it's not something that, perfectly healthy people tend to think about. Like, I remember because again, my own injuries got me on this journey of discovering like all sorts of different tools to help my own body repair, because I've experienced so many injuries for many reasons that I can get into. But if you're a very healthy person, you probably haven't heard of ELDOA, because there's no reason for you to. And ELDOA is, think of it as a series of postures. So an ELDOA is a posture that is meant to create decompression, decoaptation between certain, and you use that for every single segment of the spine. You use that for your shoulders, for your hips, for your pelvis, for anything in the body. So like the most common examples that we come across are herniated discs, right? So I have my L5S1 bulging disc. I had it in 2018, I believe. A lot of pain, you know, it impacts the ability to move, it impacts so many things. And so by creating this posture at the L5S1 level, you stretch the area, you maintain the posture for a minute, which helps the tissues around it lengthen and strengthen in that lengthened position, if that makes sense. So that when you're out of the posture, your body actually stays in that decoapted version. And so in time, you can heal your own spine by practicing this. So you're not relying on surgeries, you're not relying on different professionals who, you know, there are approaches that work, but I've been to chiropractors, I've been to physical, I've been everywhere. I've done everything. And this is the most impactful tool that I've used on my spine and on my pelvis, on my SI joints, to address issues that I've been working with. And no practitioner has been able to help me with that. And also, just kind of like on a personal note, I'm also just all for, you know, empowering yourself to kind of like have your own tools and heal yourself. Rather than always, you know, being in victim mode and waiting for somebody else to jump in and be the hero. Like if there's something that I can do on my own, I will always choose that. So that's kind of like that's the very simplistic version and the very superficial version of what ELDOA is. Because if you go deeper, so again, in level 4, which is what I'm a level 4 practitioner, we go into the pelvis, and that's where it really becomes very interesting. Not that the spine is not interesting, it's very interesting as well, because you really get to understand, well, how does that impact your viscera? Again, we're looking at, okay, the container is one thing, that's your skeletal system and your muscular system, but what's on the inside? So when you talk about the female pelvis, I mean, there's a lot going on there, you know, that can be impacted by any kind of dysfunction of the pelvis. And so you have your bladder, you have your uterus, you have your rectum, that are all in link with your sacrum, with your iliums, with the spine, with all the things. And so if there's anything, and, you know, I noticed that for me, like sometimes I'll be on a long flight or something, and my sacrum moves a certain way. It's called a nutcracker. Well, that presses on everything that's in between the sacrum and the pubic branch, right? So what happens when there's compression in there? Well, there's no optimal mobility. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of stickiness. There's a lot of, you know, that can create cysts, that can create pain, that can create a lot of things. And that can also mess with fertility. That can mess with, so like once you, again, go down the rabbit hole, you go the rabbit hole, and it's like, oh, wow. So if you're somebody who struggles with fertility, if you're somebody who has troubles with their kidneys, the kidneys are basically sitting on the spine. If you're somebody who has breathing issues, the diaphragm is connected to the ribs and the spine. If you have any issues with like anything viscerally, like organ-wise, you got to look at the links to the spine, the pelvis, all the things. And before you work on that with different types of professionals, you also want to take care and make sure that your spine, your pelvis are in alignment. Because if not, there's always going to be torsion, there's always going to be compression, and the issues are going to keep reoccurring. And so it's a whole, you know, it's a whole world that again, if you're a very healthy person, there's no need for you to kind of like go there. But if you're somebody who experiences pains of any kind, you want to look into that.
So is that usually people come to find ELDOA after they've done like, you know, the regular pain doctor or the chiropractor or the massage, whatever? Like, is that kind of how they end up like, oh my gosh, nothing is helping me. I need to find some other way to get rid of this pain or at least reduce this pain?
Yeah. I've been working with my other clients who came to me for other reasons, and I've been introducing the ELDOA method, and they've seen, so they didn't come for it. They were just kind of like, just give me whatever you got. Give me whatever you got, because I need this problem solved. And every single client that I have that I introduce ELDOA to, which is 100% of them, because ELDOA is good for everybody. I do it almost every day as well. They've seen improvements in something that they were struggling with, or just in the quality of their movement, the quality of their life to some extent. And also I want to just mention that ELDOA is not necessarily something that you do in isolation. Like, that's part of a multidimensional approach as well, right? So yes, you use the ELDOA postures, but then there are other ways to train those areas to kind of like help with the long-term healing. But it's not something that's very well known, and it is something that requires work and requires time. Right now, when I tell people, you know, some people did come to me saying that they were suggested surgery for their whatever levels of the spine by their doctors, and like, that's really the situation, the only situation that I came across where actually people are willing to do the work when it's such an extreme situation, because they don't want to have surgery. But I also found that many people don't necessarily like to do the work, you know, and that's when they fall off. And that's very common, unfortunately, but we know this to be true in so many other areas, because it's like, well, I have to do the work. There's no magic pill. Well, you know, so that's where it gets like, well, yes, you do have to do the work and be consistent with it.
Yeah.
So,
And it's always like anything that is going to actually work and be sustainable does require work. Like, it does require effort. And I think that is also, you know, to what you're saying about how your approach to health is so unique, is like, you take them through a journey that, yes, it requires work, but you're like giving them the tools and the understanding that helps them create long lasting, you know, sustainable results. And like, that is life changing right there, because, you know, there's so many other programs and people out there that are offering these short term, like, quick fix things, and then, you know, keeps people on that hamster wheel of like, why does nothing work for me? I should just give up. And so, yeah, I think that like just ties back into like your unique approach and how and why, you know, why you are able to help people create such transformation in their bodies and their life, really.
right. And I mean, you know, some people don't come to me for ELDOA, but I will incorporate ELDOA in their programs no matter what they come to me for, because of what I know and the way in which I know it helps them. And so that's kind of like, it's always, there's definitely a surprise element for people who come to work with me, because they never know the full picture beforehand. Like, I'm sure you know this, like you kind of like assess the person, you see where they're at physically, mentally, emotionally, and then you decide what approach you're going to use with them. And I don't know from the beginning. I allow myself the freedom to kind of like be guided by how their bodies are responding, where they're at, psychosomatically, like all these elements. And so I think that's also part of my unique approach. It's just like this, being in tune and recognizing what could work for this person based on their mental emotional state as well. Because sometimes, honestly, it doesn't matter if this workout program or like whatever exercise program would help them if they're not there mentally. So first, what tools do I use to get them there mentally, emotionally? Let's go into that first so that we can open up the possibility for healing in this other area. So sometimes people don't know, because I believe it's our job to be able to pinpoint that. People don't know. Oftentimes it just comes to you and they're like, I need this result, but they're not even aware of the fact that they're in fight and flight. Their system is not going to cooperate if you're going to try the approach that they think they need. And it's like no system in the body ever works alone. Like it's really rebalancing of everything that makes us human, mental, emotional, physical. And the levels, like another thing that I'm noticing is women in particular don't seem to be very aware of just how much stress they're under. Like, this is underplayed so much. And back to the conversation around, why am I not losing weight? Why am I not blah, blah, blah? It's like, well, because you're in sympathetic overload. And I've dealt with that when my cortisol was out of whack, and I that's when I got most of my injuries. Like, my body was I got so many injuries in a row that I couldn't, as a personal trainer, I couldn't figure out why, because I was following a good program physically, which is what we're taught, right? And it's just like, oh wow, once I got my hormone levels checked, and he was like, oh, well, your adrenals are shot, basically. Like, oh, well, let me focus on that. And then all of a sudden, my body got stronger, once I dealt with my adrenals. And, so it's really, people think they want one thing, and it's true, it's valid, except we sometimes have to take a different approach based on where they're at.
Yes. And that's the beauty of hiring somebody to help you see what you can't see, because we tend to just try the same things over and over, or we try similar things. And it's, we end up reconfirming that subconscious belief that nothing works for me, that I just deserve to be in pain, I deserve to be overweight, I deserve to be stressed. And so it's like, gosh, if you're listening to this and you've considered hiring a coach or, somebody to help you heal in whatever way you need your healing, do it and stop, doubting that desire and not giving yourself that gift, really. Do you think, like going back to like, if a woman is like, feels like she's tried everything to like lose weight or get out of pain, or like, one of the common things where people are constantly trying different things, different modalities, diets, exercise programs to shift. Like, do you think that the thing that is often missing is that, like, looking at, hey, you're probably in sympathetic overload, and like we need to work on the nervous system before anything else? Like, do you think that's really the missing piece for a lot of people?
Yeah, I would say so, because also what we hear this a lot. Like I've tried everything. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, that really means I've tried diet and over exercising. And then on occasion, a couple other things, but that's not everything. Like that's a fraction of what we can look at. And so, yeah, a lot of the time, again, in working with women, we do tend to downplay how much we do and what we put our nervous system through, because that's just, I mean, that's the society that we live in. We get praised for our accomplishments, and there's always more and there's always better. And going back to what I was saying in the beginning about, almost forgetting to celebrate the achievements that we get, because on to the next thing. And I'm totally guilty of that. But yeah, going back to, we're probably in sympathetic overload. We're probably, what happened to me was my body broke down about 2 years after my divorce. And I remember doing my lab work, and I remember talking to a functional medicine practitioner who was interpreting my results and creating a plan for me. And I was telling her, like, I don't understand, like, this is the happiest and the calmest and everything I've ever been. And she's like, yeah, but the way the body works after it's been in survival mode for a while, like it usually takes 1 to 2 years until it finally catches up. And she was like, what happened about a year or two ago? And I was like, holy shit, are you kidding me right now? So if you just think you got over something, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. That happened for how many years in a row? That's chronic stress. That adds up. So what happened to me was my cortisol was super high for a long period of time. And then at one point just like crashed. So when I did my lab work, my cortisol was just like kind of like flatlining. There was no production of nothing. Because my body was just tired. It was like, I can't. I've been in overdrive for years. I got nothing for you.
Check it out.
I'm out. You're on your own. Figure it out. And then that's when my body started using my like muscle connective tissue for fuel. And that's when my body was just like breaking down. I was getting injuries for nothing, for like very little things. And so, it comes up in all these weird ways where like, what am I doing wrong? And we do tend to blame ourselves, because what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? And you see everybody else, doing their CrossFit classes and whatever. And like, what not me? And it's just like, well, let's look at your nervous system. What have you been through in the past 5 years? Let's go.
Yeah.
And then you'll see this defensiveness around, like, what I do is normal. And it's just like, yeah, about that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Define that a little bit.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I remember having this mindset when I was a nurse practitioner and I was like having health issues. I remember being in school and I started to have chest pain. And so I went to the emergency room, and this was probably, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. I went to the emergency room and I'm like, something's wrong with my heart. And they're like, they did all the tests and they're like, so how much stress are you under? And I remember I was like, my answer was, I'm not under any more stress than normal. And like, ER doctors, not all of them, but they tend to just kind of be like making sure you're not dying. And then, so of course they're not going to be like, well, but like now, what I know now, I look back on that and I'm like, I was totally like justifying the tremendous amount, because I was going through my divorce at that time, the tremendous amount of stress my body was under. And I was defensive and saying, I'm not having chest pain because of stress. Like, that can't be, because stress is just a part of my life and this is just what we do, and yeah, it's like it's always hindsight, right? But like looking back and realizing that um stress is just, it is the thing, that so many of us justify and try to normalize and um think like, well, this is just a part of life. Like we just have stress as humans,
Mm.
and it's like just destroys the body.
And I also want to emphasize the fact that stress can take many forms. So this is the stress, like psychological, emotional stress that we're talking about, but exercise is a stressor.
Yeah.
Nutrition is a stressor. Air pollution is a stressor. Like there are many forms of stress, and the body, I say this often, but the body doesn't know the difference between the different types of stressors. So I was under emotional stress, financial stress, physical stress, because I was using, so the way I got into personal training in the first place was I was using exercise as a coping mechanism for all the emotional stuff that I was going through that I couldn't, like, I didn't know what to channel them into. And I felt the need to control something. And what am I going to control? Well, my body, because I'm not in control of this
Mm-hmm.
person and everything else that's happening. So I was over exercising for years.
Me too.
That's a form of stress. So then, like, when you add them all up, it's like, well, I was binge eating at some point. I was, stressing my body in that way. I was over exercising, stressing my body in that way. Emotional stress, financial stress, mental stress. There was a lot of stress from all angles. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't, so it's like, okay, but you keep pouring into this bucket. Like, what about this bucket? Like, things are going to catch up. So you want to balance that out. If you're going to exercise a lot, you better sleep a lot and eat really nutritious food. If you're going to like that, so the game we're playing is just like balancing things out in the body as much as we can, the levels of stress. And also, to what you're saying, I think we defended because like we create an identity around like whatever. So like my identity was this like fitness person, right? So then if somebody dared to tell me that, you might be over exercising, I would defend that because
Yeah.
that's a threat to my identity. Like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Who I am. And if I'm not that, then who am I? So it's very scary,
Mm-hmm.
to go there. So want to be mindful how you address that to people, but it is like defensiveness is very common. Because if I'm not that, if I can't be that, because this is destroying me, then who am I?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen like a lot of, especially athletes who their identity is like so tied into their sport and their performance. And then they get injured with like a serious injury. And then they like just lose their shit. They're like, their mental health plummets, like everything just goes downhill. And yeah, it's like, who am I without this identity that I've created and defended, even though it's harming my body in so many ways.
And I also, because I went through that as well. And a big part of what got me so involved in studying all these like gut and hormones and like all the things was because I got injured. And for like months at a time, I'm actually just coming out of a 7-month injury that happened under a different, it was under a different circumstance. But, I was getting all these injuries that like kept me from moving my body the way that I was used to for months at a time. And so I could feel myself losing my mind. And I was like, well, I don't like this person. Like, I can't keep identifying as this person because if I don't have this one thing, I'm literally losing my shit. And I want to work on that. And that's when I realized that, okay, I need to have many, many tools. Exercise can be one tool, meditation can be another, nervous system work, like all the things, because if there's shaky ground in one direction, then I need to feel safe in knowing that, okay, I have all these other tools that I can use to kind of like, and not over identify with any one thing, and just know that you're always evolving and things happen. And also things do happen for a reason. And I truly believe that all my injuries were just kind of like redirecting me. It's like, hey, look here. It's like
Yeah.
getting the same injury. It's like, okay, well, because I can defend it all I want and be like, no, like I know my programming is right. Like I take pride in being really fucking good at programming my workouts. So I can defend it all I want, but the truth is you're getting injured. Like, what are you gonna do about it? You know,
Yeah.
so like accepting that and be like, damn it, there's more work to be done. Like, what is this trying to show me? And like,
Yes.
go there.
Yes. It's always looking at the things that keep showing up in your life over and over, whether it's an injury or a health problem or a relationship problem or money problem, like we have, like, what is this trying to tell me?
Yeah.
And like letting that defensiveness down and being like, okay, like I surrender, like there's something here for me, fine, I'll learn the lesson. But it's hard to go there.
Yeah, I've had quite a few moments where like I was literally just like, okay, I surrender. Like I like just sometimes even saying it out loud to who I don't know, because I'm not a religious person, so I resonate at the moment with just the universe, and just being like, I surrender, so you can take it from here and just let me know where you want me, because I don't know.
Yeah.
And it somehow works out.
Yeah. Totally resonate. Um, I am curious, and I guess maybe you sort of answered this, but maybe not. You might have a different answer for this question, but I'm curious, like, what do you, and I also want to be mindful of time. Like, are you okay? I know that we
Okay.
decided to end at 12:30, but okay, cool. Um, there's just so much to talk about, but um, what do you think? And I know this is a big question, but the first thing that comes to your mind, what do you think is really missing in like the health and fitness industry?
I mean, based on what we talked, I really want to say the nervous system work, but also I think like exploring the human being as a whole, because it just seems like, the industry is very divided from what I see. I mean, you have kind of like the strength, the functional movement strength fitness industry, which is like really tapped into like a more masculine presence, and like for go-getters, and and it's kind of like, again, people tend to identify with this one thing. Or like you have like the yoga, very stereotypical speaking, I know there are a lot of gray areas, but like you have like the yoga community that's like so woo-woo and out there, and it's just like, I'm somebody who now embraces everything, and I can take take it for what it is, and pick and choose what I like, and make it my own. But I was definitely somebody who was looking at this area as like, I don't want to associate with that, because they're too loose and too like whatever ideas I had about that part. And then you have, everybody's swearing by their methods and their approach. And then you have, I don't know, I just don't see an integrated enough way of going about the human being. I just like the remembrance that we're working with human beings.
Mm.
It's like, I don't see it.
Like we're not machines, we're humans,
And
multi-dimensional humans.
yeah, and we have, an emotional side, and we have a physical side, and we have a masculine presence and a feminine presence, and an inner child that needs play and joy, and like can we just normalize tapping into all of us, rather than feeling like we need to be this way, or we need to be this way? We're like, it's just like a lack of integration, I think, and like an acknowledgement and support for all parts of us. Because I'm finding out all these things about myself that it's like, oh, the personal training industry didn't teach me this. The holistic health, gut hormone health industry didn't really talk about this other thing that I'm learning from my coaching community, which is so, and not to diminish the importance of experts in the field, because I truly believe, because it's so much. I mean, just look at hormonal health, like we should have experts who only specialize in that, because we need them. Like we need somebody who can go deep, and I understand we are not capable, like it's just too much to hold. So somebody needs to do their job. So for sure, but we also need people to kind of like hold the bigger picture, the bigger vision, normalize all parts of us. And then only when or if we figure out that, oh, there's really a deeply rooted issue for you in this area, you refer out. And now, okay, after we looked at you as a human being, as a person in all your shapes and forms and desires and challenges and whatnot, we realize that you really do have some hormonal issues that need to be addressed. We're referring you out to a professional that only deals with that. But to pretend that that's the one approach, or it's just this area that needs to be addressed, I think we're missing the point.
Yeah, totally agree there. It's just the entire holistic and integrative approach that I think really needs to be taken for, any issue that we have in life, and even not even just an issue, but like for prevention.
Oh yeah.
That just, it doesn't happen because, our system's set up for like, we help you when it's too late, basically, and you already have this problem, or, and even as humans, like we often don't seek help until we're already past the point of like, we could have prevented this, but we didn't.
Yeah, that's a challenging one, because I'm all about preventative care and I still struggle, because it's like, well, if there's no issue, like I got that actually. A few months ago, I flew to Dallas to do a full body MRI. It's this, maybe you've heard of it. It's called Prenuvo. And it's a new technology, full body MRI that just kind of like, it's super fast, less than an hour, I think. And like, it just sees everything in your body. And you have like a full picture of absolutely everything that's going on in your body. And to me, it's a preventative type care, like a proactive preventative care, right?
Yeah.
Because, okay, let me see, there's no radiation. Like I looked into that, like I want to know. And so many people were like, well, why look for something that's not there? Because if you look for something, you're going to find something. It's like, I mean, you could keep that mindset if you wanted to, but
Right.
I want to know if, because if you go on their website, like they do talk about, yeah, most people die of this type of cancer, but that's because you only detect it in stages 3 and 4. But if you were to detect it in stage 1, when you have 0 symptoms, you could actually live. So it's just like do the thing, just do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know there's no reason for you because you're happy and healthy and feeling good, but like, I don't know, just sometimes, and I understand sometimes, because I'm the same way oftentimes when nothing hurts. Maybe I'm not doing my ELDOAs that day because I feel good, but
Yeah.
overall, you still want to like, okay, let me tap into this a little bit.
Yep. So we've talked a lot about the nervous system, and I'm curious, like, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, if that's often the missing piece for why I'm not, able to create change or sustainable change in my body or my health, what do you think is like a clear sign? If they're like, well, how do I know that it's that? How do I know it's not just I need to try another diet? Or how do I know it's not that I just need to work out more? So like, how can they know if they're like living in survival mode and their body is like just, yeah, in like fight or flight mode, what do you tell people to look for that's like a pretty obvious sign?
I mean, I take people through, we're gonna start with breathing every time. You know, it's, can you take full breaths? Can you take full diaphragmatic? Always have a problem with that word. Breaths. Like, can you go there? And so like the first sign that I see is just like shallow breathing in the chest, inability to even expand the ribs or the belly. There's nothing there. That means so much. When the body is that tight, you can't even access your breath. And that's what, you know, causes a fast heart rate, anxiety, all the things. Because, you know, when we tap into our breath, tapping into the autonomic nervous system, which helps the body like normalize all the things. That's what ELDOA actually does. Because if you actually look at the ANS, I saw this in the dissection, it's like it just literally runs down the spine all the way down, right? It's like and when breathing, you tap into that. When elongating the spine, you tap into that. When you tap into that, you calm the system down, you know, and then the breath comes back to normal, and, you know, you calm your mind and all the things. But like, if you don't have the ability to even tap into that, I think that's like the first sign, I would say. If you can't access like this area of your body, that's where we start.
Yeah, I think that's a really easy one too, to kind of like stop. So if you're listening to this, stop and notice like what's your breath like? Where are you breathing from? Is like your chest rising? Is your belly rising? Is it difficult to take a full breath? And yeah, so there's your sign that you need to get some help before, you know, it's too late, before you take your body through just chronic stress.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes there's a simple answer for most things. Like, it's not like the first step is never that complicated. Like, it's usually really simple things that we can tap into. Like, I'm sure you have a bunch of tools, I know, that you use with clients or with for yourself, where it's like, okay, you have the breath, you have the freaking mat or the carpet you can lay on, just to kind of like come back to your breath. Like, it's simple, and then that tells you a lot about where you're at, and then you can take action from there. Like, oh, do I ask for support, or like, you know, like, what tools do I have to handle this? It's usually not hard.
Yeah, it's just the things that we often want to skip over and say, oh, it's not that. It's this other thing. It's got to be this other thing.
Yeah, no, it starts with the simple ones though.
So for those, you know, there's a lot of women that listen to this podcast that are in business, and they are focused on, you know, something within the wellness world. And so I'm curious, because you've been doing this for a while, what is a piece of advice that you would give to that woman if she's, you know, like newly starting out, or maybe she's just kind of like dabbling, or maybe she's just not getting to where she wants to be? Like, what is one piece of advice that you would give her, just, you know, based on your own experience?
Yeah, something that I love saying, because it really clicked for me, is something that my mentor Preston Smiles says a lot, which is building the body. And building the body doesn't mean the physical body. It's really building the somatic body that can hold all the challenges that come your way, right? Because as long as you try to show up a certain way for the sake of external validation, for what you think the ideal client might want, when you're playing the outside in game, you're losing. You're gonna lose. So It's how can I get more in tune with myself and get really honest with myself? And how can I work on myself, on my body, on my mind, on my spirit, on my every part of me, so that first of all, I can handle rejection, because it's gonna come. So that's the thing. Like instead of trying to avoid it, it's just like, no, it's gonna come, and it's gonna come a lot of it. So how can I be okay with rejection? How can I make it not mean that I'm a loser? How can I see it for what it is and like normalize that? How can I, just go back to your truth and your intention, which is I want to help people. Like, it's not about me. You were saying that earlier. It's not about me. How can I help this person? This person needs help. How I want to get out of my own way and be there for them because they need my medicine. And yeah, I think those are a couple of things. I can keep talking about this forever because there's so many layers to it. But I think one is just like really accept rejection and embrace it and welcome it. And two is get out of your own way and stop playing the outside in game and really start pouring outwards for the people who need your help.
Yeah, love that. And again, that goes back to what you've been talking about, which is the nervous system, really, like your capacity to hold so many different things, to hold your healing, to hold your learning, to hold, these emotions, to hold other people, hold space for other people, to hold other people's vision, to hold, it's like to hold, the unknown. Like your nervous system has to be able to have the resiliency, otherwise you just burn out over and over and over, and that is exhausting. I've definitely been there.
Same.
But it's a journey.
I'm curious what happens next, because it's like I bet you we're gonna look back to this episode like a couple of years from now and be like, what did we know back then?
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of, like you heard me kind of like complain about the fact that, oh, I'm evolving too fast and I can't keep up with like with my marketing and how I show up in my business because I never know what to, but that's a good problem to have, like you kind of learn that. And that's not the same as moving too fast and like burning out. It's just like evolving, and evolution doesn't just mean onto the next thing that's like visible to the outside world. Sometimes evolution just means I look the same. I haven't put out any other programs or courses or anything new whatsoever. Maybe I haven't even showed up on social media in half a year, but I feel like a whole new person because I've done the inner work. That's evolution. So that's what I also mean by evolving so fast that I can't keep up with. It's just like literally feeling like a different person internally. It's like, okay, how do I present this version to the world? Because I just presented this past version. So, just keeping up with that.
Yep. Definitely resonate with that. That internal work is
from now. Yeah, so 2 years from now, we'll be like, oh, that was cute.
Yeah, we'll be like, oh, look at us.
I love that though.
What's next for you? What's your ultimate vision for like your impact on health and like your business? Do you have like I'm sure you have a bigger vision. Like, is there a piece of that you would like to share?
But that's the other component of like life surprises me so much. It's almost like any goal that I ever had, I was presented with like a way bigger version of that, to the point where I do have like, 5-year goal, 10-year goal, all the things, but I got into the habit of leaving more space for life to surprise me, because I found that life does a way better job at that. The universe does a way better job at that than I do. And yes, I can tell you, you know, I definitely want to expand online. I definitely want to keep the in-person component, because I found that I definitely, for it to be sustainable, for my business to be sustainable, I want to allow myself, you know, to travel more, to take time off from this particular space more. So I don't feel like I'm a very free-spirited person too. I like to move around a lot. So definitely the online component, because of that, and because I want to reach people like from all over the world. And I do see myself, again, I don't want to limit it too much, but doing big things online, and just like inspiring women in particular in this way, in just accepting and looking at themselves as complete, like whole and complete human beings, and approach their health from that perspective. But I also want to keep the in-person component, because I'm not sure what's happening in the world right now, but I know that human connection is extremely important, and I'm definitely going to be a big part of that. But other than just knowing that I'm going to do the same exact thing that I'm doing, but bigger, way bigger, like 1,000 times bigger, I just want to be surprised by what's out there.
Mm,
The universe is really good at that. It's like, damn,
it is.
you know what? Just bring it. I trust you now.
Yeah. Yeah. Just bring whatever you want me to have and whatever's meant for me, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and all I'm doing is just kind of like being in the practice of recognizing the signs and just being a yes to what shows up, and being in that practice of, like, you know, the non-resistance practice. Because all the plans that I ever had just kind of like turned to shit, and something better occurred. So I'm just kind of like running with that.
Love that. It's an
Yeah.
amazing mindset to have. So, yeah. So for those of you who are seeking, or maybe didn't know you were seeking this until, hearing this conversation, and needing a holistic health coach and somebody who does take a different approach than what you're used to, then reach out to Sorina. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm usually on Instagram at Sorina Wellness, Sorina Wellness. That's where I like to hang out. I will put out a online course very soon. And then I will work on the website and all the things, but I found that that's not people's favorite place to reach me. So Instagram is great.
Okay. And yeah, I will definitely link that in the show notes for you guys, so you can go and follow her and reach out to her if you have questions about, working with her.
Thank you.
So we will go ahead and conclude our episode. I really enjoyed this conversation. I love talking about this stuff. And yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your energy and your wisdom and your knowledge, and just inspiring so many people with, your story. You just have so much to offer, and there's so much that's there. So just keep doing that. Keep showing up and leading the way, paving your own way.
Thank you. Likewise. I mean, I feel like we're having a very, very similar journey, a very similar mindsets, which I love. So thank you.
Mhm.
Totally resonated with this conversation with you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in and joining us for this conversation. And we will see you next on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.